So I just saw Mission Impossible, the new one, and it was Now here's a bit of context for me in the Mission Impossible films, I guess. I saw at least the first 3 of them when I was younger, and I remember enjoying them in ways. Although they're not exactly movies that I would prioritize for revisiting right away. I don't remember much about them, and there's a good chance that I won't really enjoy them as much now that I'm older. Then there was Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation, which just seemed incredibly uninteresting to me. People were saying they were great, so I gave them a chance and didn't make it very far and wound up turning them off. Sure, they have some cool action scenes, but overall they're just really boring to me. With both of those films having really solid IMDb user ratings and even metascores, I was left with the feeling that those films were kind of overrated for my tastes at least. Cut to a few days ago and this new film's ratings are off the charts. Clearly this film has broken a trend and made something that I can enjoy. So for the very first time I watched a Mission Impossible film in theaters, and I went into it wanting to like it, but I didn't. Quite honestly, the experience of this entire film is exactly what I imagined the experience of the previous 2 films would have been like if I had actually finished them. So now I'm left wondering if those 2 films are even worse than I had imagined. It's an incredibly formulated, cliched, stupid, annoying movie that's completely predictable outside of a couple bait-and-switch moments. For the most part, everything plays out exactly how you'd expect without even watching it. And don't get me wrong, the action scenes were really well directed. They were fun and exciting, and they even had a couple really satisfying moments. But just because those are scenes in the movie doesn't mean that that's what the movie is. There's a reason why I really enjoy films like Crank and The Raid. Those are movies that understand their strengths and weaknesses and cut out all of the bullshit, whereas this film insists on wasting my time with boring garbage. For about half of the entire movie, I was bored out of my fucking mind. And keep in mind that this film is 147 minutes long. I very much enjoyed the action scenes in this film. There were impressive stunts and choreography. Some of the concepts for these scenes were interesting. They were all very well shot and realistic. The effects during these scenes didn't feel cheap or fake. But to me personally, it's not worth the experience of suffering through the rest of the movie, which is pretty much indistinguishable from any other formulated piece of garbage. All of the characters are walking cliches. The ridiculous plot conveniences are constant. The attempts at emotion are nothing but forced. Over half of the movie is an experience that I could have just imagined at home instead. Try to imagine the most cliched way for a character to die in a film, and that happens. Try to imagine the most cliched villain in a film, and that's the guy. The entire opening scene where they try to make us feel for Tom Cruise's character is just laughable. Even with the action scenes being very well shot and entertaining, they're constantly littered with stupid conveniences. Apparently in France, men only go to the bathroom in large groups. There's so many moments in the film where you're wondering things like, wait, why didn't that guy just have a gun? It wouldn't have worked out very well if he did, wouldn't it? You'd think if he was gonna show up there to ambush them, he'd have a gun. What the fuck was that about? Man, closing that gate right behind that guy chasing you wouldn't have worked out really well if he had a gun, wouldn't it? It's a good thing that he didn't for some reason. Why are you driving around with the person you kidnapped with them in the front seat where anyone could just see that there's a person with a hood over their head? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? There's a really funny moment where one of the bad guys shows Tom Cruise a Polaroid photograph, and his performance when reacting to it is just so fucking funny. The music in the film was well done for the most part. Not only is the main theme a classic, but there are some really energetic scores helping the film along. But I've gotta say that my favorite instance involving music in this film was during a chase scene where it stopped. The music completely cut out for a good 5 seconds and everything got really intense because of it. And it was at that moment that I wished that they did that more than once. Thinking back on the action scenes in the film, most of them would have worked better for me without music. Everything we see in these action scenes is just so well directed that it just doesn't need it. And I often find I'm able to get much more out of an experience if I'm not being told which emotions I'm supposed to be feeling by the soundtrack. The way the scene is directed and presented is enough to make me feel exhilarated. So strangely enough, adding excessive music throughout the film makes me less able to feel those emotions. It kind of makes it a less genuine experience for me. And like I said, the music was still well done. I just wish that there was less of it in the film. There were plenty of scenes where it felt totally appropriate, but they kinda just slapped it everywhere. It feels like they're using it as a crutch despite them not even needing it. Anyway, like I said, I really enjoyed parts of this movie, but it was not worth the experience of watching the entire movie. If I were watching this at home, I would have shut it off just the same as the previous two films. If you did enjoy the previous two films, then I would recommend this one because it feels pretty much the same to me. But if you found them as boring as I did, then I'd suggest not getting your hopes up for this movie. And I'm giving this one a 5 out of 10.